We are so glad that you're here with us this afternoon. You all know that I, Sister Jill, am one of 5 members of our SSND vocation team, together with Sister Catherine, who is one of our wonderful Chicago sisters. We are your hosts for this gathering. So before I begin, I just want to share a little background about the Meet Our Sisters tour. And we do appreciate the efforts of the Communicators for Women Religious in the Chicago area. They started this annual event in 2019 as a way of reconnecting folks in the Chicagoland area and beyond, I would say, to the rich history and vibrant presence of sisters still living and ministering in the area. This is our 3rd year participating. So this is always held during National Vocation Awareness Week. And you can visit c4wr.org/most. I put that in the chat. To learn about all of the area events being offered by actually 11 different religious communities this week. To let you know how the next hour will unfold, we'll start just with a brief prayer, followed by Sister Catherine, who will share a little bit about the community and then introduce each video presentation. And then following the presentations, there will be time to engage as a group, and we'll close our time together with a brief prayer by Pope Francis. So that will be our hour. I'll begin. I'll just lead us in a brief prayer, and then we'll turn it over to Sister Catherine. So let us pray. Today, O God of all days, give us an experience of your heart. Draw us deep into your very being, into the core of your love for us, others, and the world. Give us a glimpse of others the way you see others, loving them, forgiving them, and delighting in the way they give glory to God through their very existence. Help us to discern out of that place of deep affection, so that we too might be useful vessels of your love in the world. Amen.
Thank you, Sister Jill, for the opening prayer for this afternoon's tour with the School Sisters of Notre Dame. I'm Sister Catherine, in case you didn't know who I was, a member of the School Sisters of Notre Dame, an international congregation with more than 2,000 members in 30 countries. Our mission is to deepen our communion with God and among all people, and it is lived out in ministries focused on education. It's important to note that while we certainly include schools and teaching, what unites us as School Sisters of Notre Dame across many countries and historical and political situations is that for us, education means enabling people to reach the fullness of their potential and assisting them to use their gifts toward building the earth. The congregation of the School Sisters of Notre Dame began in the 19th century as part of a broad social movement that recognized all children, not only the sons of the aristocrats, but all children needed to learn to read and write. Today, similar social movements impact our society and call for new ways of enabling people to reach the fullness of their potential in a world where everyone and everything is related. The question posed by Pope Francis in his encyclical Fratelli Tutti, "Who is our neighbor?" takes on a new urgency in our wounded church and broken world. The context where Pope Francis calls all of us to cross boundaries of faith, background, and politics to respond to the question, who is our neighbor? Today, on our tour, we will visit 4 different women, responding in various ways to the question adapted from Mary Oliver's poem, A Summer's Day. Tell us, what are you doing with your one wild and precious life? Our first visit is with Sister Rose Cecile Espinos, who currently lives with our sisters at Marion Village, a senior living community. Listen for how her life unfolded in possibly unexpected ways. What boundaries did she cross to respond to the question, who is my neighbor? Sister Rose?
July 14th, 1959. I, along with some 60 other young novices, professed our vows. I was aware of being called to live and love in a new and wilder way than previously, and dreamt of being a missionary, especially to Latin America. I am of Mexican heritage and hoped I would someday return to Mexico, which I had visited several times as a child. I felt I could serve the people who did not have the many things I had or was preparing to have, especially a good education. After professing vows, I studied to be a teacher and graduated with a BA in French. I wanted to learn Spanish, but my high school did not offer it. Instead, I was placed in a French class. I loved the sound of the language and the cultural, political, and social studies about France. People, language, and culture fascinated me. I often compared my experience and knowledge about Mexico with France and other countries I was learning about. I spent about 15 years teaching in the elementary school and later the high school. Around midlife, I needed time to reflect and evaluate who I was and what I was called to be and do. The community offered me a program in Rome to study religious life. It was a wild thought for me to go off to study in another country. The experience was fantastic. The study, called the ARC program, considered the scriptural and theological foundations of religious life. 30 of us sisters came from all over the world with the one requirement, speaking English. It was an excellent opportunity to get to know many sisters, their culture, histories, and religious life as they experienced it within their social and political backgrounds. In addition, we had the experience of being in the center of Catholicism in Rome, a wonderful opportunity to mix Italy's history and culture with that of the church in general. Life was changing rapidly. Returning home, the community asked me to be part of the novitiate community and accompany young women preparing to be sisters. Religious life is a culture unto itself, with a language, ways, customs, history, etc. Living with 2 directresses and young women from Baltimore, Chicago, and Wilton, Connecticut, we made up a community of 12. Several years later, I did the same in Guatemala with novices who were either indigenous or Latinas. Later, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, I accompanied young women from Brazil, Central America, Paraguay, and Peru who spoke English or Portuguese. The reality of this multicultural, multilingual community challenged all involved. Bringing so many different Hispanic cultures together to live as School Sisters of Notre Dame was rewarding and enriching. When I returned from Brazil, I initiated a program to address the needs of Hispanics in Chicago. Starting the program meant searching for a place to house the program, developing a plan for what we would do, and gathering School Sisters of Notre Dame and others to implement the program, which later became known as Corazon a Corazon, which you will hear more about in the next part of the tour. Other shorter cultural experiences occurred because of needs. After the 2008 earthquake in Haiti, I spent several months working with Haitians in Tampa, Florida. Their great desire was to learn English, as most only spoke Creole. In addition to teaching English, I introduced some homemaking skills as they adjusted to our ways, learned about money, transportation, and the use of electrical appliances. They enjoyed and shared their musical skills, liveliness, and cheer, despite what they were enduring. A most happy people who knew how to live. In 2014, I was offered another wild experience in the South Sudan, helping teachers learn and teach English. The new country chose English as their official language. In order to unite a country where the people spoke many tribal languages, they selected a language all seemingly wished to learn, English. A small center in Old Fongok was set up with several teachers, teaching English and some useful skills of health and morals. Old Fongok was about the poorest place I had ever encountered. There were no wheeled vehicles in the town, no trucks, cars, not even a bicycle. The marketplace was small, and the vendors had little in the line of produce, meat, or appliances. Colorful cloth and secondhand clothing were sold, but rather expensive for the people of the area. Our evening meal was cooked on a small 12-inch Weber grill and consisted mostly of rice or pasta. Fish was prevalent because a tributary of the Nile ran along the western edge of the town. This tributary also served for bathing and washing of clothes. All these wonderfully challenging and memorable experiences blessed me with a love for people, their music, dancing, language, and customs, how they live ready for whatever comes into life. They receive gratefully and give what one has and learn and live gratefully. My wild and precious life has been that. Graciously, I have received from God a full life, many wonderfully gifted people who have shared with me their lives, and I can only share heart to heart of mine in return.
Okay, now take a moment to reflect on what you've heard from Rose. Thank you, Sister Rose, for sharing how your life evolved in SSND. Your Mexican heritage and your desire to be of service both contributed to your crossing many boundaries to walk with and accompany people in many cultures. An openness to new adventures also led you to begin a new ministry sponsored by the SSNDs in the Chicago area, Corazon a Corazon. Now we invite the first non-SSND executive director of Corazon, Myra Pimentel, and her associate, Margarita Silva, the ESL coordinator at Corazon, to share how they became involved in the SSND-sponsored ministry and how they carry SSND values into the future. Listen for what values influence their response to the question, who is my neighbor? and what values are they carrying into the future?
Hello, my name is Mayra Pimentel, and I am Executive Director at Corazon. We're a sponsored ministry of the School Sisters of Notre Dame and offer one-on-one English as a second language classes to adults and an after-school enrichment program for children in 1st through 8th grade. During the summer, we also host a summer achievement camp program, which is primarily academic-based. We incorporate fun activities that help children practice academic skills during their summer break. Reading the poem by Mary Oliver, The Summer Day, puts into perspective how at times we may feel small and perhaps too small to create a change in our world. As I sit here and reflect on the question, what are you doing or what have you done with our one wild and precious life? I begin to reflect on how sometimes people think that to do something impactful, one must do something extraordinary and grand. This thought or belief can discourage us from doing anything at all. What I've learned along my journey is that change can many times happen gradually. Change can be similar to a ripple effect where the ripples move beyond us. Like our volunteer tutors, donors, and friends, I want to create a positive change. We have that in common. At Corazon, we welcome all who wish to partner with us to assist those who may feel marginalized, and we welcome all those who seek our help in their educational endeavors. In the ESL program, tutors work with adult learners on more than English language skills. They create a connection that allows learners to feel comfortable, and they move at the learner's own pace. Learners gain self-confidence, and we get to see that transformation often. Our youth programs also help children acquire essential social development skills as well as academic skills. I find that regardless of our backgrounds, stories, and experiences, we find value in being of service to others. We try to make the most out of where we are in our respective journeys. This brings me back to the question, what are you doing or what have you done with your one wild and precious life? My answer is that I'm doing what I can to help others navigate along their journey, and I'm hoping to inspire others to do the same.
And now we will hear from Margarita.
What am I doing with my one wild and precious life? An excellent question that helps me reflect, especially on the last 7 years at Corazon. It all has to do with my background. I am first generation born in the United States. My parents were immigrants from Mexico and Guatemala. I know the struggles of having parents who came to the United States in search of a better life. They did in time become US citizens, but their efforts still show even now as they still struggle with the English language. I've also pondered the same question when I decided to join the SSND Atlantic Midwest Province Immigration Committee. I have also accepted the position of co-chair of the Immigration Committee. You may ask yourself, what does all of this have in common? We are working together to make this world a better place for others. I have always had a passion for helping those in need. From helping the homeless and hungry, to helping those learn a language, to live and prosper in a new country. That is why when I learned about Corazon and the work done there to help others, I knew that that was the place I should be. I am at Corazon as the ESL coordinator, SSND associate, and part of the AM Province Immigration Committee to help those who have chosen to make the United States their new home. I want to give the people who come through our doors the help they need and give them what I wished my parents would have received when they first arrived in this country. With technology being more advanced now, we have various ways of helping people learn the English language. If they learn the language, it will make life easier for them and their family. They will be able to communicate with the people they encounter in their daily lives. Here at Corazon, we offer more than ESL classes. We offer a place that they can call home. We understand what the people are going through, and we can relate to their struggles. We are here to help them in any way possible to make this world a better place for them, their children, and their families. That is why I try my absolute best to help them in any way that I can.
Thank you, Margarita and Myra. Now take a moment to reflect on what you've heard. Thank you again to our women from Corazon for your reflections about your ministry there. Myra reminded us that we don't have to do something great and momentous to respond to our neighbor, but we can respond by simple, everyday gestures, such as welcoming them, helping them to navigate their journey, and inspiring them to do the same for others. All of these are significant responses. Margarita spoke of similar values shared by all at Corazon, values of helping others in any possible way to learn English, and helping them, more importantly, to feel at home. These are values that ripple out, as Myra said, to make the world a better place for all. You may have recognized, or maybe they were too small, some SSNDs in the pictures at Corazon. They accompany Myra and Margarita in carrying SSND values into the future. And finally, we visit with Sister Carolyn Jost, who talks about her current ministry with refugee families. During her one precious life, Carolyn has ministered in rural and urban areas of Illinois, serving people of various ethnic backgrounds as teacher, principal, and religious educator. Currently, she brings this broad experience to ministry with refugee families and what she learns from the refugees. Listen to what what she learned from this ministry, and also begin to consider how these presentations can help you respond to the question, who is my neighbor? Carolyn?
After many years of working in Catholic schools and parishes, the parish where I was ministering closed. Perhaps time for a new direction? I searched for information on the concerns that tugged at my heart: homelessness, hunger, refugees. Interestingly, I found myself returning to the website of an agency that works directly with refugees in Chicago. As I prayed and pondered my next steps, I wondered why I was so drawn to this agency. Two things struck me. My favorite picture of Mother Teresa is one where she is welcoming refugee children from Africa. So, care for refugees is in the SSND DNA. Secondly, I remember stories my mother told me about her arrival in America as a refugee at age 10. She was scolded because she couldn't read and was bullied in school because she didn't know English. I thought, I can help children have a different experience. In the time I have volunteered with the agency, I've been privileged to meet families from the Sudan, Malaysia, Eritrea, China, and Iraq, an amazingly rich experience of various cultures. Once a week, I visit them in their homes. Sometimes I work with children on homework and play games. Sometimes I help parents understand papers they get from schools and doctors. Sometimes I share what's going on in the city. Along the way, I have learned a lot, and I'd like to share some of what I have learned from the refugee families. Refugees are deeply spiritual and strong in their beliefs. Whether they are Christians from China, Muslims from Malaysia, Coptic Christians from Eritrea, they have suffered persecution because of their religion. That is why they left homes, mothers, fathers, friends, and relatives to come here for the freedom to practice their religion. Refugees continue to face prejudice. On a family visit, a mother said to me, "Not my children." She was in tears. I asked her to tell me more. She brought me papers that were issued when the family came here. Her children were listed on the father's documents as his children. On another document, she was listed as a single woman, not the mother of the children. After much consultation, it was decided that the parents needed to marry here. So I drove them to the courthouse, and they were married before a judge. I had to chuckle to myself as I, a Catholic sister, was helping a Muslim couple practice their marriage vows in English so they could respond to the judge's questions. When the mother said to me, "Now my children," it was such a joyous day. Refugees are hardworking and determined. One 70-year-old woman wanted to become a citizen. I was asked to help her. When we met, I discovered she spoke 6 languages, but never had any primary education and could not read or write. So we slowly practiced for the citizenship test. 100 questions, 50 vocabulary words. The 50 words she had to write in sentences. In July, she called to tell me she passed the test. "You come," she said. For sure, I was going to her citizenship ceremony. She was so proud, and justifiably so. Refugees are so generous. Every time I visit, they want to give me something. One day, I complimented a woman on a dress she was wearing. The next week, she had a bag ready to give to me. Visiting another family, I was asked if I like coffee. Now they have it ready every week. They also share with each other. "We have extra clothes. Please give them to my sister." It took me a while to understand that, yes, everyone is a sister or brother, even if they are not a relative. People with so little sharing what they have. Refugees are grateful for things we take for granted. An example, I was visiting a family for the first time. I noticed their child had a hard time focusing. After a few weeks, I asked the mother if the child had ever been to a doctor. No doctors. But then she showed me a picture of an upcoming appointment. The next week, she showed me the doctor's report. The mother did not understand any of this information. I tried to explain and said her child must take her medicine. After several weeks, the child shocked me by talking to me on the phone. But to think this precious child had been going through this for years and had never seen a doctor. The health care we take for granted, refugees feel is an amazing gift. Refugees welcome you into their family. Visit them a few times and you are not a stranger. You are a part of the family. That means attending birthday parties, Ramadan feasts, ceremonies for new mothers. I often say I volunteered with the idea of helping the families, but in actuality, they have adopted me into their families. It is very humbling. Refugees value their families. Everything is done together. When I visit, everyone gathers around the table. That makes homework help a bit challenging as I deal with many grade levels at once. But the older children are so solicitous and are always sure that the younger ones understand and can be included. There is love, care, and concern, and the family bonds are so strong. Lastly, refugees love America. They miss their families and friends in the countries they left, but they say they can't and don't want to go back. They love being free and able to improve their lives. They love that their children are in school. As one woman said to me, I love America. America saved my life. And one last thing about my mother. She became a citizen. After college, she became a teacher. And where did she teach? You guessed it, a school that was welcoming refugees every day. I pray all refugee families have the same opportunities and success that she did. Dear friends, welcome to your new home. You are amazing, and I am so privileged to know you.
Take a moment to reflect on what you've heard and how you might respond to the question, who is my neighbor, in your one wild and precious life? Thank you, Carolyn, for reminding us that working with immigrants is part of the SSND DNA, not only in Mother Teresa's time, but also in our beginnings in North America and Chicago in the late 1840s, where we came to respond to the needs of the German immigrants at the time. In working with refugees today, Carolyn crosses boundaries of faith, background, and politics. She recognizes the refugees' need for support in learning another language and culture, and broadens our perspective by focusing on the gifts the refugees bring. Pope Francis has encouraged all of us to open wide our tents and cultivate a spirit of community and a culture of encounter. This afternoon, you have met 4 women who have opened their hearts to the needs of the people, cultivated a spirit of community, and embraced a culture of encounter that enriched their lives as they crossed boundaries of faith, background, and politics. We are grateful for their gospel witness of their one wild and precious lives. And so now I turn this back to Sister Jill, who not only helped organize this tour, but also provided the technical skills to carry it out. Sister Jill.
Thank you, Sister Catherine. So we have heard a lot of really heartful sharing this afternoon by our speakers. And now let's just take a little time to hear from one another. What struck you? What did you hear today? What resonated for you? Roseanne?
What's really impressing me is the variety of cultures that we've been called to and in some cases almost stumbled into. It's just something so beautiful, and it's so godlike, you know, it's these surprises in our lives. And I certainly have experienced all of that, which was spoken of by refugees, that welcoming and that appreciation and that giving and all of that. It's a marvelous, marvelous experience. And it's wonderful to see. It doesn't matter where we are as School Sisters of Notre Dame. We have that in our DNA, it sounds like. Thank you.
Okay. This is Jean. I was particularly delighted at Carolyn's approach, because she talked not only in terms of what she was giving to the associates, to the immigrants, but the many, many gifts they were giving to her. And I think that has always been one of the things we've noticed when we were teachers ourselves. We got as much from the children we taught as we gave to them. And I thought that was a beautiful way to do that. But it also helped us then to kind of remind ourselves as we're doing it, how many times we have been gifted by the people that we worked with. So thank you, each of you, for your very different presentations. It was wonderful.
Thank you. Sister Barbara?
I was thinking of Bernard Lee's definition of charism, that it isn't a static thing. It's a relationship between the deep story of a congregation and the needs of the times. And the story is always evolving, and the needs of the times are always evolving. And when they meet, it causes an explosion of grace. And that's charism. And that's what I heard.
Stephanie.
One of the other things that I noticed and heard was that each of the speakers spoke about how they had been influenced by something in their own lives, maybe something that happened to often with their parents being immigrants, or some of their own experience leading them into that. And so it makes me think about as well how our own life experiences, our own history intersect with the charism of our congregation and our call here, and how those two come together and again lead us and call us forth into the needs of our times. Just aware of how so often what we personally have experienced often feeds our passion for helping another, and in that, as they shared as well, also being greatly graced in the process.
This is Rita. I was really, I guess, interested and also surprised as to how all of these ministries are really connected with our Shalom actions, and how much of this is, about we get called to do these things, but like someone said, we sometimes stumble into those. But that's also a way of responding in a spontaneous way. And I'm just grateful for hearing their stories.
Thank you, Sister Rita. Okay, Sister Pat Frost.
I think maybe as I'm getting older, I'm thinking more and more about the oneness of all beings and our sense of unity, our charism for unity. And I really felt one with all of them that were speaking, that it's us. It's all part of our DNA. That was a good feeling for me. Especially as I get older and I can't do some of the things I have done, I can relive it. I know that it's going on, especially that connection from people to people across so many different cultures. To me, that's a great gift of our unity. Thank you for putting this together.
Sister Claire.
As I listened to each one, I was very much struck how they were noticing within themselves something was stirring. And as Stephanie said, part of our different histories maybe bubbled that up. But it was something within themselves that was kind of restless or caught or attracted. And this last one, Carolyn's story about the particular website, look what it opened up. So it's really important for us, I think, to pay attention, as Barbara said, about where the charism is stirring within us, whoever we are, whether we're an SSND or not. There is something that is stirring, perhaps in our heart, and not to push that aside, but to take that to prayer, to wonder with it, and to see, all right, God, what's this about? And where is it taking me? I think that is so key. Thank you to all of you who spoke.
Sister Larita.
I was really struck by a number of things, but two things in particular stuck out for me. And one was the mutuality of enrichment that each one shared in many different ways, and that whatever our ministry is, the engagement with others in some form of service, we may give, but we also receive. And the other thing was the sense of who is my neighbor? I mean, that was so much broader. My neighbor is much more than the person who lives next door or across the block or down the street or something like that. My neighbor is around the globe. Thank you. I
would add in that I was just so impressed with Myra and Margarita as well. The charism is clearly there. Corazon is in good hands. And we see a living example of how we are handing on the charism as well. And how we are mutually enriched in that charism. So that was very rich, and certainly the sharing from our sisters as well. Any last comments before we close with prayer? So, Sister Celeste.
Yeah, I guess I also want to comment with kids. The facilitation, first of all, it was contemplative. However, that little part about at the beginning as well, she talked about our understanding of education. And it became really clear that as we meet the neighbor, we are about enabling the neighbor to reach the fullness of their potential. That was very obvious in each story. And, kids using the facilitation of being able to highlight this and, give some insights into what our charism is like.
All right. And with that, let's bring our time to a close. This has been such an enriching afternoon. We are so glad you are here with us. For you have helped to make this the beautiful experience that it is. And we hold each other in prayer and in faith and in hope. And each of us goes our way to live the charism as we are called and we are sent. So I would like just to mention I always, being a member of the vocation team, I have to give them just a little, I have to say something. So the fourth Tuesday and the Sunday that precedes it, the vocation team continues to offer an evening prayer. It's designed for women ages 18 to 45. A wonderful way it would be to invite a young woman you know, whether they're considering religious life or not, and ask them to join you and come with you virtually and join with us for prayer. So I just plant that seed, and we'll see where the spirit carries it. All right. You can learn more about that at ssnd.org/events. And with that, we will bring our time to a close. I have a prayer by Pope Francis that I believe is associated with Fratelli Tutti and seemed very appropriate given our sharing today. Lord God of our human family, you created all human beings equal in dignity. Pour forth into our hearts a fraternal spirit and inspire in us a dream of renewed encounter, dialogue, justice, and peace. Move us to create healthier societies and a more dignified world. A world without hunger, poverty, violence, and war. May our hearts be open to all the peoples and nations of the earth. May we recognize the goodness and beauty that you have sown in each of us, and thus forge bonds of unity, common projects, and shared dreams. Amen.
Amen.